Welcome to Age Potential TV. I'm Lori Campbell, your host, gerontologist, and advocate of your best life, here to introduce you to an emerging trend called Age Potential. Here's to living out your age potential. Welcome to Age Potential TV. Did you know to despair growing older actually makes you grow old faster? While to accept growing older with grace may actually help you avoid the physical and mental health problems often associated with the aging process. Connie Goldman, a profile thriver in my book, Awaken Your Age Potential, is here to challenge you to consider the journey of growing older as something of value, as a time to grow whole. Welcome, Connie.
Happy to be here.
Wonderful.
Talk about my favorite subject.
Yes, that we will do. I love this concept of wholeness, growing whole. What does that mean to you? And tell us a little bit about your journey to wholeness.
Well, the way I look at wholeness is broadening, not shrinking. We think of the world getting much smaller for older people. Mm-hmm. You leave your work, your kids leave home, you move from a big house or a big farm, and you end up in a retirement community, and the rooms are small, and you have to get rid of your stuff, and everybody thinks of it as having to give up and pull out of the world. But I think of wholeness as getting to know the person inside of you, so that the older person on the outside can take advantage of, well, my favorite expression, who you are now that you're not who you were. Yes. I really think I found that it's harder to unlearn who you've made yourself into. A mother, a PTA representative, a person active in the community, a person with a big job and working nights and weekends and getting up to the top in your profession or your whatever. Because you're geared like that. You've made yourself into that. Mm-hmm. I have. You have. But you know, there's a different time of life. I mean, maybe you lose your job. Maybe you say, I've been there and done this. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do something else. Mm-hmm. Maybe, like many people, when they turn around 50, they say, as I did, only it took me almost 3 years, gee, what my job isn't what my work should be now.
Interesting. So a lot more evolving to be as you grow whole.
Exactly. Ooh. Exactly.
I like that. Well, I don't know if you're familiar with Brene Brown, but she's a researcher and an author of a book. Her latest book is called Daring Greatly. Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna share a quote on vulnerability, and then I'd like your feedback. I quote, "Vulnerability is the core, the heart, the center of meaningful human experiences," end quote. Do you agree? And how does being vulnerable enhance the aging experience?
I know what she means. I don't like the word vulnerability.
Okay.
I remember at one time, well, I won't even tell you the whole story, but I had to look up that word. And the dictionary gives it as all negative. Vulnerability has the connotation, I think, when people hear that word, of negative. There's enough negative connotations to aging.
Well, it reminds me of the story you shared in my book on the lobster, that they have to de-shell and go out to sea.
Well, that doesn't necessarily mean vulnerability. It means a willingness to let go of that shell that you've built around you, that identity that you've become, to let go of it and leave it behind or put it aside and wait as you explore yourself for a new shell to grow. Now, I remember when I interviewed Ida LeShan, and she told me this whole story, that there's a period in there where it's dangerous. You're very vulnerable.
Right.
But you're vulnerable in a positive sense, because then you're more open to explore and leave something behind that doesn't fit anymore. And I remember Ida LeShan said, I remember I kept dreaming about that concept, and I went to my therapist and I told her, and she said, Ida, that's what you're writing your book about now, middle age, about letting go and moving on. I learned from everybody I interviewed.
Yes.
That's how I learned.
Sure,
I
we all
mean,
do.
you know, I'm not a sociologist or a gerontologist or a social worker. I mean, I'm a writer and an ex-broadcaster, and I didn't know anything about aging, except over 30 years ago, I saw the projection on the demographics. And I saw it coming. Anybody could have seen it. But nobody reacted to it.
Yeah, yeah.
I left
and
my-
we are now, thank goodness,
well,
yes.
I've been talking about it ever since.
You have. You are on the cutting edge. Well, you state in my book, how different would the future look if you concerned yourself less with what you might lose and concern ourselves more with what we might gain. So what are the gains that we have to look forward to?
Well, you know, can I start your question backwards? There are losses. I mean, I can't even open jars very well anymore. I mean, and many people have had worse losses than that.
Yeah.
You lose mates, you lose parents. I mean, there's grief to deal with. You lose, different things happen to different people's bodies. But what there is to gain is, I never talked to anybody that said, how would you like to be 17 again? I went to my 65th high school reunion recently.
Fun.
And everybody was saying, boy, I wish I had a longer life ahead, but I sure wouldn't want to be as stupid as I was when I was 18, because life teaches you
It does, it
an
does.
awful lot. All you have to do is learn. Now, some of the lessons are tough.
Right, right. And that leads me right into my next question. So life at 82, as you are, is it anything like you imagined when you were like 40 or 50?
Well, I didn't even imagine it, because everybody, I mean, we're talking about 33 years ago. And everybody was sending out birthday cards with awful things on them, you know. Birthdays are like fleas. The more you have, the more you get, or some stupid thing. You can still buy cards like that. I mean, we still have not embraced aging.
Negative connotation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a time of loss. But then I didn't even look ahead to what there might be.
Okay.
Except I wanted to learn about aging and why everybody seemed to feel that it was a very awful time of life, and they were trying desperately to avoid it.
Right.
How old do I look? Happy birthday.
Right.
How old are you? Well, you know, and then whatever you answer, they say, oh, but you look so young, and we say thank you. Why do we do that?
I don't know. Yeah. So coming to my last question here, Connie, you are a wealth of knowledge because you've had a career that spanned over 30 years in public radio. You've authored 6 books. So could you leave us with a nugget of wisdom that you have gleaned from your professional life?
Well, let me tell you something. I brought along one of my books. It's entitled, Who Am I Now That I'm Not Who I Was? Everything I've done has been based on interviews, conversations I've recorded with other people. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm just not a big textbook learner.
Right.
And I've read what everybody has been writing about aging. But what I've been doing is sharing stories. In this book, can I read you a couple of paragraphs?
Absolutely, please do.
You love all my bookmarks.
Yeah,
Well,
awesome.
you never know what you want to look up. Mm-hmm. You know, blue means important here. But this conversation was with a woman that I met who told me, I mean, she was a social worker. She used to work with older people.
Sure.
And she says, a year ago, I turned 65. I had a career in geriatric social work, and I dealt with older persons for many years. And now I was on the cusp of becoming one, I guess, because when I got my Medicare card, it was a shock. I remember saying out loud, "This can't be mine. There must be some mistake." You see, we have this whole thing built into our culture, and it's built into us. The way that you age well is you try to stay young. That's my view of what's built into the culture.
And what would you suggest?
Well, I want to tell you what she did.
Okay.
She took a year off. She left her job, she took a leave, and she tried to explore and see what she could learn by going inside of herself. I'll just read you a little bit, okay?
Sure.
She said, "I want to appreciate and validate more consciously the things that I've found to be of value. There are deeply spiritual things going on inside of me. Something is awakening in me. It's all about waking up to myself. I'm quiet at this time of my life. Now, not everyone will share my values, but I've come to believe it's important for each of us as we enter into our mature years to seek inside of ourselves for who we are. That's my challenge to myself in this 66th year of my life. I'm just starting to understand concerns like meaning and balance, but I don't feel the need to formulate a plan for the years ahead. Being in limbo gives me no anxiety, and maybe that's wisdom."
Beautiful.
How? Well, heavens, look what I've learned from other people. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know something, my whole career was based on a quote.
A good way to leave the whole segment. What's the quote that you want to share?
The quote is, the world isn't made up of atoms. It's made of stories. Mm. And we can learn from other people's stories, as different as they may be, a different culture, a different age, a different stage of life. Mm-hmm. You never know what someone's going to say in a personal story that might mean something to you.
Right, that might be really a profound piece of wisdom that they really grow from and latch onto. Absolutely.
You never know.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love your challenge of self-exploration, of growing whole. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you, Connie. When it comes to growing older, Connie teaches us to embrace it, not to succumb to it. Here's to you living out your age potential and embarking on a journey to wholeness.